I'm Tom Ford. I'm a Senior Engineering Director at Babylon. Today, I'm telling you a little bit about some of our work modernizing our thinking about availability here at Babylon. So a little bit about us first. So Babylon's a company with a mission, and we believe it's possible to put an accessible and affordable health service in the hands of every person on Earth. So just a little bit more about us. We're a health services company. We write our own software, but we deliver healthcare too. Born in the UK 5-6 years ago by Ali Parza. We've expanded to a number of other countries, including the US, across Southeast Asia. But also, something we're extremely proud of is we deliver healthcare in Rwanda, where we deliver thousands of consultations every day in that great African country. Now, moving on, as part of being an accessible and affordable healthcare service, we really need to be an available healthcare service too. And for much of our history, we thought about availability in a fairly straightforward way. So the system's either up or down, and wanted to know what our percentage availability was, we'll just count the number of hours that Tom's on a P1 instant call, divide by the number of hours in a month, and there's your availability. But of course, we wanted to challenge ourselves to be a little bit better than that. And we have built a robust service delivery and major incident management process here at Babylon, which we use. But in order to get to the next level internally, we wanted a better definition of availability. And really the driver there, we really wanted to better reflect our customers' actual experience. It may well be that the Babylon platform is up and everything's working, but there's still a chance that somebody gets a funny error on their web browser, or a clinician has to keep clicking reload until the platform works. And we wanted to capture that. We wanted to put that data in the hands of our teams and work out where we could be doing better for our members, for our staff, for everyone. At this point, I just want to give you a very brief and simplified overview of our architecture here at Babylon. So at the top, you'll see our application tier. We have a mobile app based on React Native, and that's what our users or our patients might be using when they engage with our services. And we have a number of web portals. And again, one big service we deliver here at Babylon is live face-to-face with a doctor and any follow-up you might have. And the doctor or clinician will be using a web portal. In addition, if you call us up to ask where your prescription is or something, then again, we have support staff who use a specialized web portal as well. So that makes up our application tier. That's all powered by a GraphQL API gateway, and then a series of microservices that power the platform. We have a number of what we might call first-tier microservices that provide user-facing functionality, and then more on the platform side, we have some slightly deeper platform microservices that do things like tenancy or identity, authorization, etc., mainly called by our first-tier microservices. So just bear that in mind as I go through the next slides. So we wanted a new definition of availability. We wanted to learn from best practice in the industry, SLIs, SLOs, and error budgets. But we also wanted to get something that we could trial quickly. Trial a new definition, see how it works without a whole load of build-up. We wanted a simple definition. We wanted to test it not on the whole of Babylon, but on part of the system, but a bit that's complex and obviously is all in place, so we can see how it really works for the systems we use in prod every day. We wanted to utilize our existing tooling. And as I say, we wanted to get something out there, test, and iterate and learn with our teams. So what did we choose? Well, we decided to go for 99% of well-formed requests coming into our system should have a well-formed response within 3 seconds. So that's our service level objective. And where did we apply that? Well, we applied it at our GraphQL API level and at the typically REST APIs of our first-tier microservices. And we looked at it on a per service basis, but also on for every API transaction. So we did that to try and, as much as we could, simulate what our users are seeing. We liked this definition because it's a simple aspirational one-liner. Again, because this is something new to Babylon, we wanted something easy to understand, easy to communicate. We liked it compared to our previous definition because it really captures data about each one of our customers' interactions. But it's also straightforward. In each customer's interaction is either a pass or a fail, and we just add them up at the end of the day. And finally, it was completely measurable with our current tooling, so we could get going quickly. In a little bit more detail, here's the calculation we carried out. So our service level indicator, we took the number of successful requests over a time period and divided that by all the requests. And our successful requests were, well, all the requests we were capturing minus the client errors, where, as I say, it's a well-formed request needs to come in to be counted. Then we subtracted really our failed requests, which were our server-side errors, the 5 x-axis, and any requests that were slow beyond 3 seconds, where we set our objective. And for all our requests, again, that was simply all the requests we counted minus our client errors. So we didn't include our client errors in our SLI definition, obviously, because we actually write most of the clients here in Babylon. We did look at that number because it was actionable for us. If that percentage was too high, then probably there was a mistake in our client. As I say, we set an objective that would be greater than 99.9% of our requests would be successful. So again, how does this improve a bit on our previous definition? Well, I've just put together a few simple scenarios and tried to describe how our old definition and our new definition would have differed. So this would be bad news here on the left. It's a 1-hour outage taking place in one of our regions during a high traffic period, so during the day. Let's assume we have 100% successful requests going along, and then, oh no, for an hour, nothing is successful, 0%. In our old system, we'd have regarded this as just 1 hour out of the month when we're unavailable, which would have been effectively minus 0.13% availability. But actually, in our new system, where we're counting the requests, not just the hours, it looks a bit worse. And why is that? Well, in our model here, simple model, we're saying the day traffic is twice the night traffic. So actually, this is an outage at a bad time, and actually, on average, more of our customers' requests on a per-hour basis are affected. On the other hand, let's have a look at a 1-hour platform outage that might occur at night. And here, let's assume we have 50% of our normal traffic, our day traffic. Well, here, our old system wouldn't have distinguished that. It would have been, this is an hour outage, it's always 0.13%. But in the new system, because the traffic is lower, the number of requests which have failed is lower. So it comes in at 0.09. So we think this is an improvement. It fairly represents that a full outage is less bad when the traffic is lower. And let's look at degraded service. So again, here's a scenario. During the day, we have 1 hour of degraded service. Now, in our old system, we would have probably had to figure out, is this an outage or not? If it was, it would be 0.13. If it wasn't, maybe it's a P2, and we say, actually, the system's still up, even though some customers are being affected. The new system really takes away that argument by looking at the number of requests which haven't been successful. We appreciate this is a loss of availability to a certain subset of our users, and we can quantify that as a 0.09% loss in availability, which again, we think is a big improvement. It's a lot less arbitrary than the previous system we had. So how do we actually go about implementing this? Well, we used our current in-place application performance monitoring suite, and that measured for us our request counts, our error codes, the number of 4 x-axes, client and server 5 x-axes we had, and our request duration. Super important for us to get our teams engaged with this, so we spent a bit of time making sure that all our teams had out-of-the-box dashboards, which showed this SLI and the breakdown. They got all the data, and they got that in real time, and we terraformed this for each squad, so they were all ready to go. One thing we did as well was we hand-curated a list of really key transactions that really would affect our customers very significantly if they ran slow or didn't work. And we produced that subset as a leadership report, which we produce monthly. And that contained, as I say, both key data and changes month to month. So let's go through these. Here's an example of our squad or squads are our name for team here at Babylon, our team level dashboard, the team for the services or area that they're interested in, that they are accountable for. They receive this dashboard, and you can see down here on the bottom right, there's the SLI, in this case counted over 7 days. And we break that down into the number of server errors, the number of transactions which were slow, and the number of client errors. Again, that doesn't form part of the SLI, but if that's too high, then something probably is wrong, and the teams would investigate it. To encourage and aid the teams in getting to grips with this, we set up a monthly 30-minute ops review meeting with each team, where we could talk them through and introduce the dashboard, set objectives, and really have a good feedback loop on improvement actions taken each month. And this is an example of a key transactions report. Again, this was a subset report where we hand-curated really key transactions which were important to our users. And this is a report for leadership. So what we tried to do here was make it super clear what each transaction was. Here, for example, it might be fetch patient details, which product it affected and which team, because in a microservice architecture, often there's a number of different teams involved in any transaction. So make sure that the team that primarily owns this is clear. This is product focused. It's meant to be easy to understand. Accountable gives accountability, shows clearly where you can put some time, some action. We found this super helpful in making this project seem real to product and engineering management, and to make a sort of really clear outcome of where we were dedicating resource to improve some of the SLIs for key transactions. So overall, what did we learn? First of all, pleased to say we had a great engagement and feedback from our engineering community. People identified with this, they liked the tools. Our monthly meetings were great to keep up momentum, very well attended, and people went above and beyond to fix the things that we were highlighting. We certainly found hidden pain points within some of our customer journeys, and the tool really allowed us to identify and prioritize those for fixes, allowing us to rapidly deliver customer value. We identified some unexpected interactions. An example would be one of our back office tasks was to upload significant amount of data to our system, and we noticed this broke a subset of what we thought were pretty much unrelated user journeys just for a short period of time, which turned out to be due to database contention. And we liked our monthly report because it drove engagement with our senior stakeholders and our product leadership by making what could be a pretty esoteric topic really very much aligned to customer value and the product that we're delivering, and of course, our members. So where do we go from here? Well, we're very happy with the outcome of our project. So we're pushing further adoption in our engineering community across Babylon. We're actually engaged in upgrading our GraphQL API layer at the moment to use Apollo Federation. And we're keen to make these SLOs a first-class citizen in our adoption of that. Slightly longer term, we'd like to move from an API request-based system to look at journeys within our system using distributed tracing. We have correlation IDs on our journeys, so we can trace a user's request for a number of microservices. By looking at those journeys, we should get something that represents our user experience better than just looking at requests at the edge. And we want to tie these SLOs and maybe move to sort of error budget way of thinking into our alerting framework. We have good alerting at the moment on a per service and with external synthetic transactions, but we'd like to get alerts, okay, this endpoint is running a bit slow, you're going to miss your SLO if you don't do something in the next few days. So that's the end of my talk. As always, we're hiring. Babylon's looking for exceptional talent globally for our technology organization. We've got key locations in London, Austin, Bangalore, San Francisco. Obviously, would be super happy to hear from you if you're interested in our mission, and particularly the kind of things we talked about today. I'm here for any questions you might have. Thanks very much for listening to my talk.
Thank you very much for taking the time to go through that. One thing that I appreciate first is that you're Babylon Health, which it turns out does not mean babbling on. So there's a bit of egg on my face on that one. But it's nice to see folks coming in and having conversations from regulated industries where, again, as hearkening back to some of my snark earlier today, you're not Netflix. If you mess things up, the consequences are, I'm not saying worse than if a video stream fails, just different. It's going to be a different experience. Also, what I find neat is that you're coming at this from a senior director position, which is where I'm going to open with, where the people that I see talking the most about SLOs, some of them are selling SLOs as a service, are effectively speaking SRE language and SRE language only for a lot of it. So what I'm curious is how you wind up articulating that up the stack to folks who are not already bought in on the concept with a clear understanding of what it is, because it feels like it's a hard sell to, I guess, upper levels of management, of which you are teetering on the brink, if not already into.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I think we're lucky in Babylon to have a very sort of enlightened management at the CTO level. So it hasn't been too hard a sell. But what I would say is that the organization, as it's grown, has moved on. Right, we've gone through a number of different leaders. We've gone through a number of sort of different philosophies in this. It almost feels like at the scale we're at, which is, you know, reasonable in terms of engineering. So several hundreds of engineers across 5 different regions, looking at AWS as our global footprint. You kind of need to get a bit more sophisticated in some of these concepts. And of course, we don't want to start from nothing. We want to stand on the shoulders of giants here. So as a pretty technical organization, right up to, you know, director and CTO level, we went out looking for what we could apply from the, you know, sort of best practice, you know, really sort of modern software engineering thinking, and looking how we could apply it.
Yeah, what are the old challenges? Sorry, go ahead. No, please.
No, I was going to say, it's actually, that brought me back to your first point around regulated industries, because like software engineering is software engineering fundamentally. And although, yeah, there are definitely challenges in regulated industries, and I spent a lot of my time thinking about this and making sure we have the right paperwork and the right processes and all of those things. But fundamentally, you know, what we've learned about delivering great, highly available systems is as applicable to Netflix and applicable to Babylon as applicable to Google, right? We've learned a lot in the last 20 years in how to run these things, and, you know, those are the best practices. And the trick is to take those best practices and apply them into a regulated industry in a way that ticks the boxes, right? That you've got to do what you've got to do from a regulated point of view, but that also means, you know, you're really best off taking those best practices and making them work.
We have a follow-up question here, several questions. Let's dive into them because my nonsense is not as entertaining. Vera asks, was the monthly review that you did with all teams, as in was there social pressure to improve the indicators, or was it more of a one-on-one on a team-by-team basis?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So we did it on a one-on-one basis. This was a project which we carried out with part of our organization, so meaning my part of the organization. So the teams knew me pretty well. We had about 10 or 12 teams involved, and we spent half an hour with each team every month. So we weren't looking to, you know, in any way, even implicitly, set teams against teams. What we were looking to do was engage our teams in the metrics and encourage them to want to improve and want to do better sort of independently. So I'd say that worked really well. And a number of teams really impressed me by going far above and beyond what I expected.
Ethan Ransom asks, do you have strategies when the outage doesn't even generate error traces to subtract from the SLO? Networking issues come to mind. Try to extrapolate the missed traffic or get better tooling. And I'm going to just interject now for you, but mostly the audience, especially the members of the audience who might work at Honeycomb. No, buying a product /Honeycomb is not an acceptable answer here. Go.
So it's a good point, right? And I glossed over some of the technical detail. So when we do some of our SLI measurements at a per service level, that's great for capturing degraded traffic, but it doesn't capture full outages. Okay, so in addition to checking things at a request level in the HTTP error codes, we use a combination of synthetics that come externally from running out of GCP, whereas we're in AWS. And we also use health check endpoints in our services. So complementing those together, we effectively can put the synthetic blackouts on top of the service level request SLIs to get an overall SLI which counts full outages. So I would say our tooling obviously is still in its early stages here, and that's a process we carry out sort of semi-manually. But that's definitely an improvement for us. We basically have the data, we just need to munge it correctly to get the right answer.
So in my day job, I fix the horrifying AWS bill, a small problem that impacts everyone eventually. And looking at companies' experiences attempting to manage actual budgets, I'm sort of down on the SLO approach because, oh, cool, just take the thing that you already are bad at when it's actual money and now apply it to errors. So do people find that managing error budgets is something that they actually get to, or is that one of those more aspirational things that mostly just causes drama on Twitter, especially over the last 24 hours?
Interesting question. So I would say making teams accountable for their SLIs and for their error budgets, and particularly the management bit. You know, saying, oh, okay, I've got a bit of error budget free. I can do this extra A/B test, or I can push ahead with the experiment. We're not really there yet, and I'm not sure how far we'd want to go, given where we are as an industry. So we're really aspiring. Obviously, 100% is not in the industry we're in. Even 100% is not where we need to be. But
yeah, it's one of those aspirational things you never achieve in engineering, like a perfect uptime, 100%, everything's up all the time, exactly once execution, or happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to be better. We think this is a great way of getting the metrics to continually improve. But we're certainly not at the stage of the concept of spending your error budget. That's not something we've got to or necessarily want to go to.
Further question here is from Kesha, is how to convince the customers to think about number of transactions versus good minute, bad minute SLO definitions. As in, when the customer doesn't really care how many requests were dropped during the outage, but they care about instead for how long their team wasn't able to use our product.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and certainly where we're at is using our SLIs and SLOs as internal tools, and we will have a different SLA with our customers, which might, in terms of like corporate partners, which might not necessarily resemble our SLO.
It does feel like it's very much an internally aligned tool, because if it sounds like, well, things should be going down at a certain amount and you should have plans for that, communicated to like the general public when they can't get to your website, it doesn't go very well.
I think that's true, right? And an SLA is agreement between your partner with a certain degree of comeback, financial otherwise, should things go wrong. My philosophy here is by having a really detailed information internally, and really aspiring to continually be better at SLOs and SLIs, you get to a place where you're not going to be dropping your SLA very much. And if you just look at your SLA and you don't have a really detailed picture internally, then you're going to be in maybe a sort of piece of blissful ignorance, but you're going to see more outages than you would otherwise. So even if you, and I don't know necessarily that every company would, try to convince your customers to accept error budgets and SLOs. Even with conventional SLAs, I think the SLI SLO picture still has a lot of value internally and really, makes your organization better at meeting its SLAs.
It does seem that, especially anything in a B2C style scenario, it give up on some level. I agree with what you're saying. Last question for you. As you look back across the process of adopting this, is there anything you can identify that would have dramatically shortened the path to adoption, made it easier, things you wish you'd known at the start that you discovered that now in hindsight make a lot more sense?
That's probably a good question to ask me in a year's time, right? Because I feel we're still oh,
that's right. It's a journey, not a destination. Like, how does this compare to an ERP project where it's how many people are implementing ERPs? Everyone. Who's completed it? No one.
So I think I was fortunate to have some really brilliant technical assistance here from my team, and we were able to. I think the things which sort of surprised me was we were able to do a hell of a lot with the tooling we had. Right, there was a lot of extra scope with all of the great stuff we built up over a number of years. We just hadn't quite brought it together into one easily understandable metric, and so that was a key insight. And the other thing, which I kind of mentioned in the talk, was again, there's a huge amount of data. A lot of that data is really relevant at an individual team level, but by putting this together in a sort of overall report where it's a subset, but it's a really key bits, that made conversations between engineering and product the product leadership, for example, easier to say, look, this is a real effect on your product that we're seeing, but perhaps we didn't even know about before, perhaps we didn't understand in this much detail. And so moving to that made conversations and being able to put the time into this, I think, an easier process. So that's something I'd advocate. The right subset of data in terms of communication is key.
Well, thank you very much. No one knows their external reputation, but Babylon very much has a reputation for technical excellence. And now that we're starting to see a little bit of how you're getting there, a lot of things that we see in the outside world in certain circles begins to make a lot more sense. Thank you so much, Tom. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Corey. Pleasure.